maybe we can just start with a prayer and just have God guide us, and I'll give you sort of the outline of what I'm thinking for the night and for the next 12 months. Let's pray. Thanks, Lord, for this night. Thanks for letting us gather together through this technology. God, I pray that you would help us to make your name known throughout the earth, through our writing, through our words, through our hearts, Lord. Help us to encourage each other. Give us your wisdom as we go through the evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Great. So here's sort of my layout for the evening, and then whether we follow it exactly closely, I'm not that concerned, but I wanted to start with just a little bit of why we're doing the group, why it's been on my heart to do this, and really just sort of the why do we write? Why do I want a Christian writers group in particular? So I'd like to take a little time on that, and then I'd like to just talk about how this group can best help each of us. And really, I have some ideas in mind for the next 12 months, just the next 12 meetings, but it's really, whatever works for everybody, what you need and what you'd like to hear, so it's sort of a group directed thing. I am recording the sessions just so we can have it if other people join us later or, want to catch up or something. So I don't want to put you on edge about that, but it's just a chance to let other people know what's happening too. I invited maybe a couple dozen people personally and told them to invite their friends too. So that's how this group sort of came together. And I'm glad to expand it though too. So if you know other people that want to do it, I don't mind having whatever size of group it wants to be, that's fine. I want to encourage people in their writing. So we'll take this first little bit here to just talk about the whys of what's on my heart. Maybe that'll prime the pump, and then for section 2, we can talk about what you're here for, what you might be interested in getting out of a group like this. And then our third thing is just to sort of say, all right, do you want to keep this going? Should we make this a group, and do you want to come every third Wednesday for the next 11 more months? And we'll see what happens after that. But, that sounds like a plan, and that would take us to right about 8 o'clock, so 1 hour of that. Then I'm just glad to be around. Other people might be glad to be around until 9. If you have personal questions, one-on-one questions, things that you don't maybe think the group wants to know or needs to know, but I'll just be around. Maybe we'll do that off the recording or something. But I don't want you to feel like you have to stay till 9. My hope is that we have an hour, a good solid hour of getting things done and sort of stay on task. It's easy for writers and word people to spend time writing and wording. So any questions before I jump into sort of the why? Or everybody can hear me okay? Things are working?
Yeah, I had to step away for a moment. Could you just repeat everything you said for the last 5 minutes?
Sure. Yeah. I'll send you the recording next.
Okay.
Great. Kent, welcome too.
Howdy.
Great.
How are you? Sorry I'm late.
That's fine. You're actually up. So I was just telling that I just sort of want to give up front a little. We'll go till about 8 o'clock of just sort of talking through what my vision is for the group, and then also then hearing from everybody else what they're hoping to get out of the group, and that'll help practice for the next 11 months. Kent's been a friend for years and years. He was a worship leader back in Streeter, where I used to go to church at Central Church of Christ up there. And then he moved to St. Louis Christian College, where he became a professor of worship, and he's done other titles down there, doing their online ministry, currently their communications role down there. He does podcasting, he does lots of things, and I meet with him and another guy once a week by Zoom like this for an hour on Monday mornings from 8 to 9. We've done that for several years, and we encourage each other in our writing and other things. So I'm just going to give him a special introduction right now, because I want to talk sort of about the why we write, why, and really what's my heart in this for Christian writers. So, and Kent recently just preached a sermon on the topic, so I thought maybe he could share just a few minutes of sort of a summary of sort of what's the impetus behind Christian writing from your perspective.
Sure. So what I did a couple weeks ago is, so I'm a college teacher. That's my day job. And I did something that I always tell my students not to do, and that I always really, really discourage, which is write a sermon on Saturday night. And I mean, I literally have not done that since college. I mean, I've written sermons before, but not on Saturday night, before I'm supposed to give it. But what happened was, as Eric mentioned, we're in a group. We talk a lot about writing, but we talk a lot about other stuff as well. We do this every week, and we've been doing it for years. And I told Eric a couple weeks ago that I was scheduled to go out and speak at a small church in Central Illinois, just to fill and speak one Sunday. And that I had a really busy week coming up, and then I really felt compelled to talk about writing in the sermon, but I didn't feel like I had the time to really put together anything, like some coherent thoughts, and really make it something that was good. So I had another sermon ready that I had done before and wasn't really that excited about it, to be honest with you. And was busy with some other things. And then on Saturday night, about 10:30, I just felt really compelled that I wanted to talk about this the next morning. And I broke all the rules that I try to live by, which is be prepared, have something that's good you're going to bring to people and that kind of thing. So I just kind of took a couple hours and scratched down some thoughts. And the first thing that I shared in the message is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, which is really what's the value of having a book. And there's value in all kinds of writing, whether it's articles or if you're doing podcasts or you're doing speaking or whatever it is. There's value in all that stuff. But for me, it's also a really personal thing. And I shared this story that's really meaningful to me. So as a kid, I was very close to my grandmother, but she passed away when I was 3 years old. And I've always felt a really strong kinship to her. This is my dad's mother, and she died of a heart attack whenever she was 47. So I'm 45. I don't know where everybody else falls on that age spectrum that's here tonight, but I'm in that stage of life where, hey, people can, you can die suddenly, have a heart attack at any age, I guess, but I'm kind of in that stage of life where those kind of things begin to happen. And that's what happened to her. And I don't have any direct memories of her. I do have some home videos that my grandfather shot, kind of the blurry 1970s videos with the shaky cam and all those kind of things. But the one thing that I have of hers, actually two things. One is an old mixing bowl. I know that sounds kind of odd, but it's a mixing bowl that my mom gave me that belonged to my grandmother. The other thing that I have that belonged to her, and this is one of my prized possessions, is a tattered notebook that's filled with handwritten poems that she composed, I guess, in her 30s and 40s. And these are poems that are actually really, really good. And I was kind of impressed with her poetic skills and writing skills, and have been that way for a long time. And it's really made me think over the years of the value of having something that's printed that you can pass on to future generations. And as I think about all the social media that we do these days, I mean, I do podcasting, I do social media. Many of you do the same kind of things as well. We have ebooks, we have all kinds of digital stuff, we have videos, but in 25 years, in 50 years, in 100 years, are all the things that we are creating today that are digital, are those things going to be accessible by our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and their children, and so on? And I don't know the answer to that, and it makes me kind of nervous, really, because I think, the people who are around me today, my son, students, friends, other people in my life, they know what I think and they know my story. But what about my grandkids? What about their grandkids? When they go to learn about, Grandpa Kent or great grandpa Kent or whatever they're going to call me, how are they going to know what I really thought about things? How are they going to know my opinions about things? How are they going to know what my everyday life was like and what I thought and felt and what my experience was in this world? And really the only surefire way that I can think of that they're going to be able to know those things is in the context of a printed book. Because I have no idea if any digital files are going to be accessible in 100 years, but I do know that a print book lasts, and a print book will look virtually the same 100 years from now as it does today. So I have a really strong conviction that people should not just be writing books, but that we should be creating print books, because, in 100 years, how is anybody really going to know you and your values and your story of faith and your experience in life? To me, the only surefire way is just having a book that you can pass on to people. So I mean, books are, yeah, they're about business, and you can make money with books, and you can have influence and all that stuff, which is all good. But it's also, to me, about legacy and about passing on your story to people, and just the value of having a really long-term vision for what you want your life to be about well after you're gone from this earth.
And Kent,
So,
I'm gonna jump in here, Kent, for
yeah,
just
go ahead.
to tie onto that, which is interesting because Kent is a very forward thinker. He's a podcaster. He's a blogger. I mean, he's got social media out his ears. But to hear him talk about the value of print books, and I think it's interesting. But I'd like to turn it over to Clayton for just a second. Just Clayton Ermiger has been a friend for years, mentor to me. Clayton loves his birthday and birthday cards, and so you probably don't mind that I say that you've had a few birthdays in your life. But
That's correct.
Clayton really took this to heart, just passing on a legacy too. And maybe Clayton, you want to talk just for a few minutes about why you wanted to create a book, and you actually did this recently. So that's.
Yes, I created this book, Life Not to Be Single-Handedly. I'm showing it here. Maybe you can see it. And Eric made it possible. Without him, I'm dead in the water. So he's helped me with 2 books. As Kent was talking, my concern is, will the grandkids even want to read the book? That's the concern I have. We may make the book available, but will they want to read it? We're getting rid of stuff out of our storage now, and we can't get rid of any picture books because kids don't want them. They don't want to take them home. They don't want to look at them. So I'm dealing with this issue. And so anyway, I wrote this book that shares a little bit about my life, and a number of people have taken it and read it, and I'm glad that I wrote it. And I'll turn it back to you, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Clayton. Just Clayton's probably his biggest ministry is prayer and prayer ministry. So that's why he cares so much about his grandkids' hearts and great grandkids, and he just wants them to be filled with faith. But I think that you have this book to pass on to them. I think will go a long way with your prayers. So when they come alive in their faith, they'll be able to look like Kent does and say, "Oh, this person really had a deep faith." Kent talked in his sermon. He sent me a sermon notes afterwards, but they're just that John and Charles Wesley were these 2 Wesley brothers who became the Wesleyan Methodist. Charles did a lot of preaching and a lot of things, but John wrote it down. John wrote biographies. John wrote his books, and so now everything we have is through John's eyes because John bothered to write it down. And I think there's a lot to be said for legacy. So that's a very good why we write. Also, I'm just going to add on to Kent's too, just why I write, because I just want to reach the world for Jesus. This is my goal. And C.S. Lewis has a quote that the world doesn't need more Christian books, it needs more books written by Christians. And there's a difference between a Christian book that teaches teaches things, but just even to have a book written by a Christian that has a Christian worldview, a Christian understanding of things, and there's so much out there that doesn't have that understanding, and it leads people in wrong directions, wrong ways of thinking. And so whether you're writing fiction or novels or devotionals or whatever your genre might be, I think there's just a great value in having Christians writing. And so that's why I just felt strongly about having a Christian writers group. I've attended a couple other writer groups around here and there, and I remember, and I don't know your goals in writing, so I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I went to one Christian, not Christian writers, just a writers group, and there were maybe 15 people there, and the question came up, why are you writing? What do you want to accomplish with your writing? And to a person all the way around the room, except when it got to me, every person was, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be famous and make a lot of money. And you know, having written 25 books myself over the last 25 years, I'd say, you know, good luck with that. If that's your goal, good, you know, I go for it. You know, I hope to make it, but I just felt so much better about my goal is to just make Jesus' name known to people. I want to influence people's lives. I want to touch their hearts. I want to move them in a way that moves them towards Christ. And whether I'm blatant or overt about that, or whether that's just comes through in the storyline, it just made me feel so much better about my goal, because I can write a lot of books and put a lot of things out, and when people tell me they were touched by it, or they were moved by it, or they were encouraged in their faith, I feel like it's a win. If I had to judge it by my financial success, I would say I'm just a failure after 25 years. But that's not true on another front too, because I self-published all of my books. I've tried traditional publishers. I've tried, you know, going out there getting my book pitched, and Bridget's walked with me probably longer than anyone through that process. And even just a few months ago, I got farther than ever with a traditional publisher. Moody Publishing was interested in my St. Nicholas book. This is one I wrote about 10 years ago about historical fiction about the real life St. Nicholas. And Moody was interested in it, and it made it all the way to the final editor who makes a decision. She liked it, and she took it to her marketing team, and they said they weren't interested. So I've never made it that far with a traditional publisher, but it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to, you know, have a $1 million success. But I can say that ever since I started writing 10 years ago and publishing them on Amazon, self-publishing them, I've never paid anything. I've always made money from copy one. So it's free to publish it on Amazon. It's free to upload your book. It's free to create an account there, and you can order a copy at a discounted rate. So I sell this for $15 on Amazon, but I can order a copy for $3.50 for myself. And then I can sell it and make whatever profit I want. And from the $15 on Amazon, they keep $5 for the printing, and then we split the other 10, 50-50 with Amazon for their marketing, and I get $5. So I get $5 per book, and I've made $5 per book for years on all of my books. And I don't usually share this, but I probably made $10,000 over the last 10 years off of publishing. But I've written 25 books. I've published a lot. And when I went to Moody and they asked how many I've sold, they were, you know, they came back, you know, that was sort of they didn't use the word pathetic, but it's I was not in the rank of what they would consider a successful published author, and they weren't able to carry me. So, you know, even with publishing a lot of stuff, but I feel really good because I've cleared $10,000 that I wouldn't have had otherwise, and I haven't had to pay anyone to do anything. Now, granted, I like doing all the parts of it. I like laying out books. I like designing my own covers. I like uploading it, figuring it all out. You know, so that's part of my forte. But you can do this too. You know, you can take your book, you can get it out there, and you know, if you're looking at getting a print book at the end of it, you can get a print book. I don't remember, Clay, what yours cost, maybe $2.15 per copy, you know, plus shipping from Amazon to get it to you. And you know, and he's got a nice 8x10 book, 100 pages maybe, and he can you know, he can give that to friends. He's given away hundreds. He's sold some, and Mitch raised his hand that he's read it before. So you know, it's just a nice way to do it, and just to know that you can do this. You know, that's part of why I want to do this group. I've helped a lot of people like Clayt and others just to publish their books, and I do it for free. I do this group for free. This is not, you know, this is not a money-making thing for me. This is just my desire to help people. So when people say, "Hey, I want to write. I want to walk through this," I just say, "Yes, please do. Your story is important." And you might think, "Why would I need to tell my story?" In John chapter 21, he just talks about how Jesus did many other miracles that aren't recorded in the book of John. And if all the stories, all the miracles of Jesus were recorded, there wouldn't be room in the world for all the books that would be written. And that was just while Jesus was alive. And Jesus has been working in people's lives for 2,000 years. And the world just couldn't hold all the books. And I just think we need to flood the world with stories of how he's worked in our lives. Testimony books, devotional books, teaching books, how he can help us in our marriage and our finances and our kids. And yeah, I'll try not to get into preacher mode too, but I just really have a passion for telling as many stories as we can. And even when I started, I was like, oh, this was 20 years ago. I wrote my first book on the topic of sexuality. I worked on it for 7 years. And I just didn't feel like I was a writer. I didn't feel like I was an author. I did want to tell what I had learned about this realm, and I had learned a lot, and I'd ministered to a lot of people. And so I thought, I'd like to share this. I think that's one topic Kent talks about, how do you know what to write about? Well, what kind of questions are people asking you over and over again? That could be a really good topic. And so people were asking me a lot of questions about this topic. And so I thought it would be nice to have it in book form so I could just give them the book, say, read the book, and then come back and I can start fresh with you with other things but rather than repeat myself over and over, it would just maximize my time better. So I've been working for 7 years on it. I met Ray Pritchard at a retreat. He's a pastor in Chicago, and he writes a lot of books. And I started telling him about the book and how I just couldn't finish it. And he said, Eric, I want to stop you right there. The first thing I want to say is don't think book, think books. Because if you're just thinking about one book that you're going to write for your lifetime, you're going to work on that book for the rest of your life. You're going to try to perfect it, and you'll never be done. But what's your next book you want to write, Eric? And I said, oh, I just want to finish this. And he said, no, really? I mean, is there something else, some other topic? And I started thinking, I thought, yeah, actually, I would like to write about this. And he said, exactly. He said, once you start thinking about that next one, you're going to finish this one just so you can get to the next one. And he was right. And I finished that book that year, and 20 years from that moment, I've written a book per year for 20 years. And all of a sudden I'm at books, and I was like, oh, how could I write a second book and a third one? And how could this possibly work? But I'm just finished a draft of I don't know if it's my 25th book or something. Depends how you count them. I've got piano books and quote books and devotional books. But it's about, I'd say 25 to 30. But, and I just finished one, and I'm like, I just love this process. I had 3 more books I want to write, and I say, but I've got other jobs, I've got other things to do. So I sort of want to unpack over the next 11 weeks. I'm going to stop here, but I want to unpack how I write, where do I find time to write, how do I come up with ideas, how do I lay it out. And this isn't by any means this is how you should do it. And that's why I've invited other writers here, Bridget and Kent and Ellie and various people that can say, I do it this way, I do it this way, this is what works for me, and you might resonate with something. But over the next 11 months, we can sort of talk through that whole process. I usually write in November. I start writing a draft of a book in November with the National Novel Writing Month. NaNoWriMo is this challenge, and they challenge you to write a 50,000 word book in a month. And it's just a wonderful thing. We can talk more about that later. But part of me for this year, as I think about the upcoming year, I would love for anyone who wants to take that November challenge and jump into saying, I'm going to finish it. And as we talk over the next few months about different things, where you are in the process and what you want to do, in November, you could write that book and then spend another few months editing it, and we can help you get it uploaded to Amazon. And a year from now, you might actually have a book in your hands, something you can give out to other people. So I hope to walk you through just the practical of how to make that happen. Anyway, I'm going to stop here at 7:30. What I'd love to hear, though, is a little bit from you, what you're wanting to get out of the group. And I'm sort of going to launch with Bridget just a little bit, because Bridget has been part of writers groups before. I have not. I have dabbled in here and there, but I've never actually been part of a writers group. I don't even know what a writers group normally does, or what. But I knew Bridget has been, and she's written articles for Focus on the Family. She's written a children's series of books. She's written so many things. She grades essays for national tests. I don't remember the companies that you do the SATs or ACTs, but she grades national tests and does a lot of book writing. She edits my books many times. I send her my books, and she does my editing for me. So I invited Bridget to say, Bridget, what might we do with a group like this? How could this be, is there something different about a group like this? She even sent her an email. She said, oh, it sounds like you're more like a writers association, not a writers critique group. And I said, what is that? I don't even know. So maybe you could start just by, I don't even know what a writers group does, or what could we do?
Well, I don't know.
Or
I
maybe for
guess
the
when
town
you,
that you're part of, what's, yeah, what,
well,
what's the value, I guess? What's the value of a writers group?
well, I guess it depends on what everyone, what everybody wants. And um, the groups that I have been a part of as a writer are critique groups, and then what I call association groups. They're banded around like children's writers or some type of genre, like everyone writes memoirs or whatever.
Oh, that's
And
I see.
so it's those are the different types of, those are the groups that I've been a part of. But like if the goal is to meet and exchange information, that's one thing. Is there a need for expertise? That's another thing. Is there a need to swap manuscripts? Those are the different functions that of a group that I've been involved in.
What's a critique group do?
It usually serves the purpose of writers swapping manuscripts to get feedback and encouragement, feedback, criticism, critique, on what they're writing, and to take it further.
Okay. Okay.
Critique groups, they have a lot to offer. It's also there can be some it can be a tricky thing, but it's a good way for to push you if you are trying to meet a deadline, trying to get a manuscript out there. It's a good way to push yourself to have something to deliver to the group, to be reviewed, and have others comment.
You've got it every week or every month. You've got to turn something in. Okay.
Yeah, and then it's good for you as a writer to read others and have to figure out if you haven't had experience editing or anything like that, and it's to figure out, well, okay, this isn't working, but why? And then that process improves your own writing, because if you can identify something that's, oh, this is really good, I like this, well, why do you like it? And then that improves your own writing. So it's a great tool. If critiquing can be a wonderful way to improve your writing, as well as get to know other writers and encourage them in their own writing.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could go around. Just any of you have some particular goals or points of what you would hope from a group like this, or why did you turn up tonight other than someone invited you? I'm glad. Jeff, maybe start with you.
Let me put my 2 cents in.
Sure, Clay.
I mentor men, and in that process, encourage men to write their story, and that broadens their horizons as they write the story. So as we look at books and writing our own books, we can also encourage others to at least write their own story, because of what the process does in broadening their own horizons as they write their story. So not only do we look into our own writing abilities here tonight, but we launch out and encourage others, anybody that we come in contact with, to write their own story. That would be a wonderful start. And the process of writing their own story, they're going to gain a lot of insight.
That's really good, Clayton. I've heard the reason to write your own story is because you know it already, and it's hard to jump straight into fiction or something else that you don't know the world, you don't know, but to write about yourself is sometimes the easier. At least
a good place to start.
Plus, it's helpful to you. It broadens your horizons. That's great.
That's right.
Yeah. How about others? Thoughts on what you're hoping to do? Rachel, I didn't even get to say hi to you. You're a friend of my cousin's, apparently. Joan, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Are you in Texas too, though, Houston? Or?
You look so like her. It's blowing my mind.
It's the beard, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. I've been writing for a really long time, since I was young, and I feel like I'm an ADHD writer. I don't know where a lot of my writing has gone, but it's in notebooks everywhere. You know, I don't quite finish a story, and but it's something that I keep being driven to do. So I appreciate having a support group to maybe get something actually. I like what you said, Eric, to have a goal to get something actually done and have some kind of accountability and support.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. How about others? If at the end of the year you could picture yourself in some photograph, what would you hope would be different than where you are right now in your writing? This is hard to imagine. For me, sometimes my goal is I just picture myself with my completed book about an XYZ topic. I'm like, I just have to picture it, and I get there. But maybe you want to write for magazines, maybe you want to write for mailing lists. I don't know what your different writing issue is or interest is. Kent, of course, is talking about book printing, but there's lots of other writings we can do. So you guys have some other goals or interests?
I'll go, Eric.
Yeah.
I have been writing for several years, and even went through some writing classes and training for about a year, spent some time blogging, and have stepped away from it a little bit because of just sometimes you have to go live some life, I guess, to then have some content to write about. Maybe that's just what I tell myself for stepping back. I miss it a lot, and I when you mentioned the other day, Eric, that you were starting this group, that's been something that I've wanted to do, be a part of a writers group. I've never done that, and I feel like this is an opportunity for me to really connect with my passion again. I have a lot in my head and in my heart that I want to get out, and I have done the blogging thing and have been content doing that, but I do think I have a book or two in me, and I just need encouragement and coaching. It can be, for a perfectionist, I'm a perfectionist, and so it can be a little daunting, and there are times when I start many different projects and don't want to finish because that can be a scary thing. So I'm looking for support and coaching and encouragement. Happy to share my writing and get feedback, whatever direction this group takes, I'm on board.
Terrific. Thanks, Heather. I want to introduce Ellie a little bit too. She's
Oh boy.
Hi,
Eric.
Well, she's a 2 and 3-year-old, and she wrote a children's book. Do you have your book there handy to show us?
Nope.
No? All right.
Isn't that great? I do. Wait, hold on.
Oh, she does. She
But
actually
I
goes
feel,
out and
but I feel like my friends have seen it, right?
she goes out and yeah. Tell us about the book, Ellie.
Okay. So most of my writing starts from study, reflecting, open up the Bible, talking with God, right? And so as I was doing that, that's where the story of Bella Gets Rescued began. So anyways, so my desire is probably along the lines of yours, Eric. I just want people to know Jesus, right? And so is there a way that I can write that would help wherever there's confusion, clear up confusion, right? Make it simple, if that's possible. And just so people know him. So anyways, I wrote Bella Gets Rescued, and it's very interesting how people have taken it, right? So some, like Eric, have said, Ellie, it's an adoption book. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a book about knowing how much God loves you. So really, it's God adopting you into His family, right? But anyway.
But I bought it as a gift for a family who adopted a child. I thought
Yes, you did. So did a lot of other people.
Yes. You never know how God might use it. But
Yeah.
Ellie's done book tours. She's signed books. She's sort of done a traditional hybrid type of publishing, working with a publisher. And I knew she also had friends that were interested in people ask her all the time. But I thought she'd be a great asset too. And just if you have questions about that over the next few months, Ellie's great. There's another woman I invited, when I invited the group, Heather, at our small group. One of the women said, "Oh, I think it's the right children's." And I was like, "Oh, you should come and you and Ellie could connect, or if you want to write devotional." Or Dan's told me about some fantasy books that he wants to write. I don't know if that's the right genre, Dan, but so maybe some of you would connect with each other. It's a chance to network with each other. Ellie, I don't know if you have a new project in mind or you have a goal in mind. If you were to have a goal for this year.
So I'm uncertain. I took some time. I just took a break. There's a lot on my plate, and I'm like, so I think part of this was figuring out how to add that back in the midst of a super full schedule.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How about others? You have book projects in mind or other writing?
Well, I'll go as a pastor. So I have a oral report due every Sunday. So in a year, I produce probably 500 to 600 pages of written content, and I write for several newspapers, and I do that. But there's 2 book projects that I've been working on, I guess, like you were for your book, indefinitely.
Mhm.
And I can identify a little bit with the ADD writer. And I would very much like to finish. When you have a sermon, it's got to be done on Sunday. And so I need a little encouragement and coaching and just along the way to actually finish these 2 projects. And I have a couple of more things as well, but that's me.
There are lots of ways to write and get your word out. Lots of ways. Dan, you want to tell us about this book on your heart? Or you don't want to give away any secrets?
I'll try. I have an unstable connection, so I was waiting for that to
Oh,
stabilize. So if I drop off, it's not because I don't like y'all. It's just because network trouble. I just appreciate everything that's been shared so far. That really resonates a lot with me. I've had a book that I started maybe about 10 years ago or so, and I haven't touched it for a long time, 8 years, 7, 8 years. But it's always been one that I wanted to finish. And so when Eric started talking about a book club and just rubbing shoulders with other thinkers and writers, that was really appealing to me. Just looking to get some insight and some experience, I think. And when you were mentioning about writing about yourself, I was thinking, oh man, that's the last thing I want to write about is me. And I'd much rather write about ideas. I like to think. I'm a big picture kind of person. I like to think about stories, and so I'm looking forward to just getting to know all of you really over the next few weeks and months, maybe even the whole year. I think that's going to be fantastic, and it's going to be a great experience. So I'll share a little more about the project that I started a long time ago, maybe another time, but it is kind of a fiction setting that I've started.
thanks, Dan. That's great. And Dan's a resident at Moody College, and he works full-time at corporate offices, other places, but he's my resident at Eastview, so he works with me on the online ministry for this year. And we've just been talking, and I'm glad he wants to jump into his writing. How about Mitch, Miriam, Deb? I put you on the spot if you don't want to talk, but if you have any thoughts, it'll help me plan out the next few weeks.
I can jump in if you want. I'm Deb Alexander. It says Deborah on the screen. That's probably just from my email. Just like what Dan said, I really appreciate everything that everybody has shared so far. That's super helpful. I started writing just a couple of years ago, and I'm working on a devotional for women who are married and who are in marriages that are in crisis. And basically my idea is that it's a book that they can pick up in the middle of the night. Just a devotional with a short devotion, with a Bible passage, something I write, and then a prayer at the bottom, just to encourage them. I haven't decided how long it's going to be yet. I'm still in the process of that. And I've also got a book proposal for it because I was thinking of doing traditional publishing. I've not really looked into traditional at all, so I'm definitely intrigued with that, Eric, what you said about that. Love to know maybe some more about that. I'm in an online writing community. I don't know if any of you have heard of Hope Writers, but I'm in that community as well. And that sounds like it's different than this, which is kind of neat too. So I think I should be able to do both. I also have a website that's going to be back up this weekend. My daughter's helping me fix a few things on it. So I also write about marriage and about homeschooling. Trying to think of what else I'm putting out on there. I love to read, so I write about books. But my main project is my devotional for women right now.
That's awesome. I had no idea about that.
I know. And you and I were just together Sunday in the family room. We haven't talked about writing before.
No, that's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, great.
I'll go.
Sure.
I'm Miriam. I have always enjoyed writing, but never considered myself really a writer. I was taking a class at Moody Spokane, and the project was just to kind of retell a story, and the professor was harping on the fact that a lot of times churches tell Bible stories to children directly. We have built up these Bible heroes to say that they are something to be emulated, and that they were just so brave, and that's why God used them. They were just so strong, that's why God used them. And I just have like this burden on my heart as I'm reading books to my two little toddlers that I'm like, I never want them to feel like measure up because they're not as good as Paul or not as good as David, and highlighting their insecurities and their frailties, because that's what in the end highlights God's glory and gives him glory. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I've written a book about Moses. It's a conversation between him and the burning bush. So it's a children's book, very short. I was recently, well, this weekend, a publisher wrote up a contract, and I am totally clueless. I don't know if I should go with it. I don't know if it's a good contract or a bad contract. I don't know if I should do something more traditional. It's like a publishing, like hybrid publisher. So like they have editors and everything, but they would just take my book as I've written and illustrated it and do all of the distribution themselves. And they have connections with Ingram and some like Spring Arbor, some of the big name ones, but I don't really know what any of that means. So I'm sure that a lot of you guys know this stuff, but I just would love to learn more from all of you. I'm like a baby with this. So
That's great. That's great. And Ellie might be a great contact for you. Talk about the highs and lows of hybrid publishing. So.
Yes.
Yeah, really. And I'm a big self-published guy, so I can't say enough about that. And my contract is with myself, so if it's bad contract, it's my problem.
True.
but thanks, Miriam. That sounds cool. That's a great take to Bible stories. So. Mitch, how about you? I think you're the final Brady Bunch window here to. I'm not hearing you though. Sorry.
Let's try something else
There,
here.
yep. Gotcha.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, you're gonna find this funny. I hate books.
Reading them?
I have always hated books, and just never really got into reading at all as a kid. A few years ago, I started getting more interested in reading. Perhaps that's age. I don't know. But I have a collection of experiences. I think this is really kind of what my book would be about. That's the direction. I've got probably a collection of about 30 or so experiences that about half of them are already written out. Just things that I've seen and witnessed in life and where God has been active, and relating that to everyday kinds of things, with my kids or my apple tree in my backyard, or all kinds of different things, and stepping out in faith and how that I don't know, impacts other people, how you can use those experiences to impact other people. A lot of it is really a collection of posts that I've put out on Facebook, just as testimonials and witnesses of things. When you take a chance and you take a step out in life, you just be ready for whatever it is God's going to do with it. And there's been some really cool things that I've seen. And then I've also lived a pretty full life at 48. And Kent was talking earlier about heart attacks. I had my heart attack at 47. And grew up in a military family, and so I've lived all over, including Israel and Germany, and there's good experiences from all of that I could write about. And so it's kind of a hodgepodge right now, at least. So I guess maybe I've got 2 or 3 books in me too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Great. And as much as we've talked about getting a book published, I reach way more people on my website and through my mailing list than I ever will in a print book. I mean, it's as much as I like it, and it makes me feel satisfied that I have a printed copy. But you can reach many people on social media, on on your own website, and Mitch, I guess, is great at that. He posts these stories on Facebook, and I don't know if you're on other social media. That's where I see him, and just he testifies to God's glory, right where he is every week. Every so often he'll share a story. He's got lots of other interesting things, but he's definitely intentional about sharing about making apple pies and giving them to people as blessings, and raising money for mission trips or whatever he does. And I don't want you to feel limited to book publishing at all, because it's the number of books I publish is minuscule compared to how many people I can reach. And we'll talk one week about mailing lists and things, and just grown a mailing list over the years to 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people in countries all over the world. And with a push of a button, I can reach way more than I'll ever reach without it. But I publish a lot of mine, like Deb with the devotionals. I publish a lot of them on my blog, and on Ephesians, Lessons in Grace. And I just, once a week, I go through a passage of Ephesians, and I take an angle at it. This is all about grace, this book, how I can be more graceful. A lot of it's just for me, just how can I learn better and share it with people. Or Exodus that I go through, and Lessons in Freedom. How can you get through? How did Moses get through? So I've written about 15 devotional books in that genre, and I just send those out once a week, and it gives me that deadline, that Jeff was talking about, if I say, okay, every Sunday I'm going to publish something, I'm going to mail it out and push send, and but then I just started putting those in books. So I was writing every week anyway, like Jeff does his sermons, and I just kept writing every week anyway. And then at the end I'd have a book, and if people wanted it, people would ask for it and stuff. But I don't sell a lot of them, in terms of publishing terms. But anyway, so there's lots of ways you can use your writing. But there's something about the book, like Kent said, that just, it's a little more, it feels a little more permanent, feels a little more like you can pass it on. And it helps you really think through your writing. You're like, wow, my words are going to be recorded here. I wrote a book about I came out of a different sexual background, and I wrote just about that, and I had it translated into Spanish. Somebody in Colombia wanted to give it to their churches and wanted me to come speak and things. And so, once you get it in print, once you get it written, but you want to get the words right, because this really matters. It really matters. And there's something about putting in print and your picture on it and saying, okay, this is my story. This is it. It's not necessarily just a Facebook post. There is a difference, Bridget, right? When you're writing a book for publish, and the whole process that goes in the editing, and it's like, wow, you're really getting the words right. At the same time, I wrote a book last year that I don't know that I will ever publish. A lot of my books I write, and I don't know if they'll ever see the light of day. Kent gets to read them, or Bridget maybe gets to read them, and I'll send them chapters every few weeks, or every few days. With this last book, Kent and my friend Al, I've just sent my chapters every few days as I'm writing them. I write for an hour in the morning. I just send a chapter to them. I'm like, I don't know if this is really going to fly. I don't know if this is a good idea. This is some internal things that they're intimate stories that I'm not sure that I should share with anyone. Can you give me some guidance there? I'm not sure how people are going to take that. I don't know how my family's going to take it, how the church is going to take it, how a possible future spouse is going to take it if I write stories. There's things that we write about that sometimes are really dicey, and it just helps to have a few close friends, a few close people who can read it, give you feedback. But what I'm saying here is that last year I wrote a whole book, and I don't think I'll publish it anywhere, because there's too many people alive, too many people know details, and I don't want it to have bad reflection on people. But just the process of writing it, I was amazed. The number of people, as I was writing it, the chapter I was working on that week ministered to somebody that I was talking to, and I could say in very short form, because I thought through the words very carefully, I could say, here's exactly how God spoke to me in a situation similar to that. And it really speaks to them, because you put a lot of work into forming the words, thinking through it, and then God uses it. So even though I won't publish that book probably ever, that's going to come out in the things I say, the way I minister to people. It solidifies my own thinking. Like Dan is, a thinker, loves intellectually understanding, analyzing, putting things together, synthesizing thoughts, and making something coherent. And I think just the writing process itself, even as Clayton says, it can expand your horizons. It gives you a greater appreciation for God, for what you've gone through, puts it in perspective. Part of why I don't want to publish some of my writing or my journals is there's a lot of vomit in there. There's a lot of, I don't like what's happening. This is horrible. Mm-hmm. But as you start writing about it, you see it from God's perspective. You see it differently, thinking, well, if other people are going to read this, how could I, not how can I change the story, but what really is going on? Because I trust God, I believe He's for me. But man, having a heart attack really, SUCKs. That was really, I had mine after Mitch, and he encouraged me to get a heart attack too. So, no. I looked so far on Facebook when he posted it there. I said, let me do that. A few days later, so I'm driving to the hospital, scrolling through Facebook, trying to read his symptoms to say, okay, he said something about his right arm. Do I want a heart attack or not? But even that, it can help people. So anyway,
let me add something else.
Yes, please.
Since I started mentoring men about 20 years ago, I've had a real desire that men would read books. Men don't read books, so that's a real challenge. But a month ago, a guy took 34 books, the largest number ever. So one of our goals could be to get people to read books. Boy, that's a challenge because people aren't reading books anymore.
Thanks, Clay. That's great too. And I think people would be interested in your stories. I think you have things to say, and each of you, just from what you've shared. And it's unique. It's not the same thing that Max Lucado is going to reach, or pick any author. You might wonder, why do I need to write a book? But you have an audience, you have influence over people that you'll be able to reach people that others won't. I know I'm reaching people that others will never reach. And they read my book because they see my post on Facebook and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know Eric went through that. I want to hear about that. I want to hear more about that. What was his take on that? And, or Deb, you know, I didn't know any of the specifics about your desire to help people in their marriages. And I'm guessing there's a few stories behind that. And there's, you know,
A few.
you want them to pick it up in the middle of the night, you know. I'm curious about that. And I think people are curious. And so it's a great place. We're right near the end of an hour. I don't want to shut it down, but I just want to transition to a little more free form, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to talk about. If you need to check out and say, you know, you'll come back. But I just sort of want to summarize a little bit. I mean, I've gotten a whole yellow page of notes of different things that you're hoping to get out or what you're wanting to do. I had taken a page of notes of things I'd like to do over the next 10 or 11 weeks. I'll just tell you some of that, and your input will help sort of formulate what those look like. But next time I was thinking of talking about how to get started writing. Just got an idea, make an outline. How do you go from idea to actually starting to write things down? How do you take a bite of this elephant and just not be so overwhelmed? You know, I just write a few paragraphs every day. I put 30 stories that I want to tell was this last book, and and I said, oh, I want to tell this story, and I sat down for a morning and I just wrote down, I want this story, this story, this story, this story, each on one line. And then over the next couple of weeks, I just started writing one story in the morning, and I'd write another story. I'd send it to Kent and Al and sort of get their feedback. But just how do you start? How do you do that? I'd like to talk about editing and critiquing and hearing feedback from others along the way, and that helps keep you accountable. So I'd like to take some time about that. At some point, I'd like to talk about laying out and designing your book. And, you know, how do you format a book on your computer? Just practical mechanics. How do you put a title at the top? Is it the chapter title or the book title? Do you put your name on it? I don't want to put my name on it, as Clayton says. Don't put my name everywhere. And I say, your page should be on every page, Clayton. Anyway, it's about God, it's not about me, but it's about both. It's God working through. But and you can actually format your own covers, or Amazon, if you do the self-publishing, they have a cover creator. You just type in the thing. They've got a bunch of pictures. You slap on a picture. You know, it can be as simple as that. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it. Kent has spent some money on the graphic design for his covers of his books, and there's parts of it you might want to do yourself, and parts that might be better if someone else does. You know, not everybody wants to do or can do, or want to produce quality. Anyway, but we can talk about if you want to do it yourself. I'd like to talk about self-publishing on Amazon. There's other ways you can do, like children's books, hardback books at Lulu or other places. So if you're interested in different kinds of books, I'd like to talk about launching a book. You know, once you've written it, how do you get the word out? What do you do about a book signing at Barnes and Noble, or how do you even do that? Can you set that up? And yes, you can. You can call them and you can say, I want to bring some books, and I want to. Or Ellie was just at a book fair at Bloomington Library recently of local authors, and she can talk about her book. And there's different ways, marketing your email lists, how to build up an email list. And none of this is to be overwhelming to you. I just want you to write, but I just want to give you some ideas. Traditional publishing routes, like writing your book proposal, Deb and Miriam, and how do you do some of that? In November, I'd love to really focus on a NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month project. And if you want to jump in, I'm sure I'll be writing another book in November that I'd love for you to jump in with me. And we just take some time, maybe do some readings even. I'd like to each month have some little exercise where we even create an outline, write a chapter, write a few paragraphs about a story, have a beginning and a middle and an end. And it sounds simple, but it's to actually walk through it with someone sometimes can be all the difference. There's books I've read that Kent's read. You probably all have had different exposure to different books, but one little trick that I had for the St. Nicholas book, I read a book by Robert McKee called Story, and he said every chapter has to turn, or every scene has to turn. It starts positive for the characters, then it goes to negative. Then it goes from negative back to positive. Then it goes positive to negative, and it just builds and builds and builds till the end of the book, the big climax. But things like that I didn't know. And he says, just traditional storytelling techniques, there are ways to tell a story that's just more intriguing, more interesting, keeps your reader engaged. And once I started doing some simple things like that, it's like, oh, wow, people tell me they read the whole book, they sit down, they can't wait to read the next week. And it's just because I start each chapter happy and it ends sad, and they want to know what happened. So then it starts sad and ends happy. And so there's that tension the whole way through the story, and is what I attribute it to. There could be other things too, but they're simple things. So, and then maybe in December, we just have a celebration that you've actually finished, accomplished. You've got something at least underway, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel or something like that. And maybe we can start it all over again next year. But anyway, I'm going to take all these thoughts that you have. I'd like to hear any thoughts you have just at this point, and then we'll sort of just say you're welcome to stick around. I'm glad to stick around and talk more.
I'm going to sign off.
All right. Hey, wait, before you go, can I take a picture of everybody? We got this nice window here. I had been praying for 12 people exactly. I told my kids I want 12 people tonight. And they said, why 12? I said, I don't know, I just want 12. Look at that. Smile. And sometimes you just go, I'm trusting that God brought the 12 people, and whether it's a different 12 or it grows to 100 next month or whatever, that's down the road. But I'm really happy that 12 of you want to join, and that's great. And Kent, I was going to bye, Clay. Thanks.
Bye, Clay.
Bye-bye.
Clay's wonderful. 86 years old. Wrote his first book last year, and just wrote the second one just recently. Great. Kent, I didn't get to. Kent's just a great writer, too. So he's doing some ghostwriting now. Kent, why are you into ghostwriting?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. And by the way, most people, whenever I share that I'm doing ghostwriting, everybody's first question is why? Why would you want to do that? Because it sounds so counterintuitive to the impulse that we all have. But there's really a couple of reasons. Number one is that it pays. I mean, that's a primary reason, honestly. But that's not the only reason. Another major reason for me is that I learn things that I wouldn't be able to learn otherwise. For example, I've got a couple of clients that I do some writing for on a regular basis. It's nothing super, super major, but it's like kind of these little ongoing projects. And it's interesting because I get to get an inside glimpse into their business and how they work and how they think. And for me, that has been a really, really unexpected benefit of doing things like freelance writing or particularly ghost writing, because your name is hidden and nobody knows that you did the stuff for them. So you kind of get this inside track into how they run their life and the things that they're doing and the way that they think. And you kind of are able to develop a relationship with people who are really successful in ways that you wouldn't get to otherwise. So for me, that's been a really huge benefit that I wasn't even expecting. And there's something, honestly, when I first got into this, I thought it would be really, I looked at it as just kind of a drudgery thing, like, oh, I've got to do this stuff for this person who's paying me, and it's going to be really unpleasant, and let me just get it over with as quick as possible. You know, that was my attitude. But I've been really pleasantly surprised that there's a freedom that comes with that, because you don't have to market it. You don't have to do anything other than literally just do the writing. And there's for me, a real joy that comes with creating something that makes somebody else look good and that makes them happy and that pleases them. there's just kind of something really liberating about that in some weird way. At the same time, I would never want to be just writing for other people, because I think from a business perspective, you know, when you are only writing for hire, then you don't have anything that you actually own. They own everything. And I always want to be working on creating my own assets and my own intellectual property and my own books and materials. So it's kind of fascinating, because the stuff that I do for other people helps me actually to be better. And hopefully the things that I'm creating for myself, that actually helps my clients. So it all like interweaves back and forth. It's super interesting, like stuff that I work on for one person, something that I've learned putting together like an email funnel for them, or working on podcast stuff for somebody, or whatever it is, then that helps me with the next client. So I don't know, there's just something really fun about doing all those kinds of things that I find a lot of joy in that. Not everybody does, but that's the long answer, I guess.
And I think that's great. And I think, Kent's and my perspectives, because Kent's writing for hire, and he does it for money, but he's also a gifted writer, and he's providing a service to people who, it's like a speechwriter for the president or something. People need people to help write for them, and it's write compelling, and if you have that gifting, it's a great way to use it. And if I made a lot of money, I would be very focused on money, but I don't. So I'm trying not to be disappointed. But Bridget, you write for hire on a regular basis, right? Bridget?
I do write for hire.
Yeah. You want to tell
Hire me.
You want to tell me a little about that, and just we can focus on that down the road. And I'd love to do a podcast just one-on-one with you. Later. We'll put that out too. But yeah, just because that might be part of people's goals too. So I don't want my goals to be your goals. I just.
Well, okay. So what's your question?
What are your goals with writing, and when you write for hire, do you find that satisfying, enjoyable, etc.?
I do, and very much like Kent said, it's nice to be able to help someone else reach their goals. I hope my sound is okay.
Yeah.
I do. I also find a lot of satisfaction. I'm an editor, and helping my clients through editing reach their goals means it's very satisfying. So that's kind of the other end of writing, which I enjoy creating my own projects, but I get as much satisfaction out of helping writers reach their goals. So for me, it's a two-way street. A lot of people don't enjoy the editing, but I get as much satisfaction out of that as I do out of creating words.
And I just love that. I'm always amazed when Bridget helps me edit my books, whether it's editing grammar or editing for the big ideas. She seems to really enjoy.
I love that.
I love reading your work. I love finessing it. I want to make you successful. And she's not doing it for for anything except she just loves helping me look the best that I can look and get the message across the most polished way I can get it across, so things aren't stumbling blocks. And she's helped me invaluably in a number of my books in a number of ways. And so anyway, you've definitely heard my goal of writing, that I love.
Well, Eric and I have we go way back. As he was saying at one point, we worked together at Texaco many years ago, and so I remember from way back when, it's like Eric gets an idea and he's gone with it. And then it's just really me coming in going, yeah, that's good.
But you can make it better. And then she helps me.
Yeah, that's good. Change this word. That's it. But anyway, so my goals as a writer is always to any project I'm working on, just to take it one step better, one step further. Can I make this project? Can I go a little bit more? Can I do something I've not done before? Can I improve? Where can I go? So and I always feel like I always feel like I'm a beginner, because there's always more to learn. So I love the whole process. I love all about it. I mean, I like being with other writers in the community. So to me, it's all a good thing.
Great, thanks. And I mentioned a podcast, and I'm hoping to start a podcast in the next few weeks where I'm going to interview people, just one-on-one for an hour. And I'm really looking forward to Bridget's interview, just all the essays that she has read from college students around the country. I want to hear what are her top 3 writing tips that she would wish every student knew, that she sees over and over again, that would just make their writing shine. And I'm hoping to do those podcasts with writers, artists, musicians, various people to help release their gifts. And so we'll hear more from Bridget, whether she can join us. I know you're busy and may not join us.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I love it. Mr. Dan.
Yes, the raising hand worked.
I see the raising hand button there. That's nice. Good.
I just appreciate what everybody shared so far, and especially Bridget, when you were talking about just really enjoying the process of editing and helping other writers to get clarity on their writing. And I find that that's often something that I struggle with writing. Not only just being consistent in writing, but oftentimes I'll get bogged down, and I have a lot of ideas that start to get tangled up together. And so, maybe something we can talk about as a group sometimes. How do you take ideas, a set of ideas that seem to be related, and begin to untangle them and have them come out in some kind of coherent format? Maybe that's an outline, maybe that's something else. Maybe there are other tools to do that. But I know that would be a huge help for me, just to kind of unlock where I tend to bog down in getting those ideas mixed up. So that would be great help to me.
Great.
Oh,
thanks. And
that's a great topic.
Maybe in the second hour of things too, we could even pair up with somebody and just go off and do a different video chat on your own or something, or like Elle and Miriam, if you want to talk or something. You just take this extra time to do that. Or Dan, you want to say, I've got these 4 ideas and I don't know how to make them all fit, or maybe I don't really know what a writer's group does. So like Bridget says, it's always a learning process. I think, oh gosh, I've learned so much about writing. And then I come back here and I go, never done this before. I have no idea what I'm doing. So there's so much to learn, but just start. Other comments, thoughts, things you want to throw out on the table?
It would be helpful for me at some point if you talked, and this is kind of the feely part of writing, but as some of you kind of referred to it when you were sharing how you overcome the fear of rejection, the feeling of, okay, I put my heart and my soul into this book, or I'm sharing my story, or like in my instance, Moses is my homeboy. We were real close. And so as I wrote a story about him, I'm like relating to everything that I'm reading, and the words that I'm writing of the burning bush talking to him are words that I've heard God speak to me continually throughout my life. And so handing it into a publisher or having someone else close to me read it, I feel like my heart is just like open. And I have kind of overcome it. I mean, I've sent it to a couple of publishers, but I think I'm always going to kind of feel that piece that I write. So like insight, or you're not crazy for feeling that way. Any kind of like insight you guys would have in that regard would be super helpful.
Any couple people want to jump on that question?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think Dan, that was you that just wrote that validation is important. And Miriam, I think it really is. And I think when we I even have a hard time posting on Instagram sometimes. That's still a challenge for me because those are my words. And then it's just, it's vulnerable, right, to put it out there. I submitted to, I don't know if you're familiar with Encourage, the blog that's online. I submitted to that back in December, and I got my first rejection on, I'm trying to think, it was last Monday. And I made a folder because it's not going to be my last rejection, you know, and I'm a lot older than you are, so it might be a little bit easier. I might have a little bit thicker skin right now. But I think if you feel like you're supposed to be writing those words, you just keep writing them, even if they help one person. That's what I've learned the most since I started writing. If your words will help one person, then it's worth it. And between that and being called by the Lord to do it, I think you're just on the right track. So you're doing a good job. I can tell already you got a passion for what you're doing, and that's great.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Other thoughts on rejection? Putting yourself out there? And I think we'll do a whole night on this. I have a friend, Shelley Busby, who I'd love to have come and share. She told her personal story. She was a model, incredible insecurities, and felt so ugly, and all of this stuff in her life. And just, you know, she shared, she started writing the book not thinking she'd ever be able to tell anyone any of this stuff. And she saw some incredible breakthroughs with relationships, family, friends. It was huge. But fear.
Yeah.
I think you bring up a really good point, and that's something that I haven't really thought a lot about, is for whom are we writing? You know, are we writing for ourselves? Are we writing for other people? Are we writing ultimately for God? And what does success look like? And, you know, Eric, you made the point that commercially you may not have experienced the success that you might have hoped for, but you've reached a lot of people, and God has done great things through your faithfulness in writing, and you've touched many hearts, like Deb, like you mentioned. So I think for me, and maybe just for all of us, it would be a helpful exercise to just define what is success in writing. Why we ask the question, why are we writing? But maybe start with for whom. You know, who are we writing for? I was talking to one of our pastors here at Eastview Christian Church, and he said that he's writing a book, but he's writing for an audience of one, meaning that he's writing for God first. And he says, you know, if nobody else sees this, it's still a book that and writing that is going to bless God's heart. And what God chooses to do with that is what He chooses to do with it. So that's stuck with me, and it's just helped to kind of ground me in terms of in how am I going to value the writings that I write. It may not be in terms of numbers. It may be a publisher will reject my writings, and that's okay if in some way that God is pleased with it. And obviously we hope to achieve you know, success in other ways, but just kind of starting with what's success look like first and foremost.
That's good.
One of the things that's helped me most is really sending my chapter at a time to Kent and Al, and his friends, and Bridget when she gets in that loop. And I am just terrified pushing the send button on some of these things. I'm really terrified what the response might be. And I am astounded when they'll come back and say, wow, I've never thought of that. That's a new way of looking at that. So, you know, I've never had them, and maybe I've selectively picked my people. And you might have to, you know, you want people who can nurture you, you know, because not everybody realizes what a tender thing this is that you just shared, what a treasure it is. But just to have a few people that you can send it to along the way, not waiting till the whole end of the process. But that encouraged me to keep writing and keep writing. When I wrote my book, 50 Shades of Grace, it was very intimate detailing of my personal life on lots of levels, stories I've never shared with anybody. And I was fearful every time I pushed the button. And I was just amazed when they would write back and say, man, that was so powerful. You have got to publish this. And I eventually published it under a pen name because it was still a little hard. But just that gave me such encouragement to hear back from some people that really cared about me. And there were some stories that didn't make it into the final version because they gave me also some guidance and said, that's probably not really helpful, or you don't need to say it that way or go into that detail, and so that really helped. But I can say honestly, and this is always crazy to me, but every time I speak, every time I write, every time I put something out, I am just gripped with fear, usually after the fact. I can't believe I just did that. I can't believe I just said that. I just preached someone's funeral last week, and I sort of went out on the edge and I preached the funeral the way he would preach it. And he was a rough, tough sailor guy, and he cussed and he did everything. And I shared some of the things that he would say in his life. And, they're just not phrases I would use. They're not things I would say, but everybody in the audience would know them. And his daughter sent me a note just before the sermon or before my funeral and said, whenever I would leave my dad, I took care of him the last few years of my life and of his life, and every time I'd leave him, he would say, "Get the hell out of here." And she said that translated to "Goodbye, I love you," and that was his way of always saying "Goodbye, I love you." And I said, "Oh, do you want me to share that in the message?" LOL. And she's like, "Oh, I can give you tons." And she started all these phrases he would use. She said everybody in the audience would get it. They would all know exactly what he meant. And I actually used 2 or 3 of them, and I dismissed the people at the end. I said, I had told them earlier what the translation meant of that phrase that he used. And I said, I'm going to give you the translated version as I sent them out. And I said, "Goodbye, I love you." But everybody knew that meant get the hell out of here. And the number of people that came up afterwards that spoke to them, that helped them, it was the best funeral message they'd ever heard. And his unsaved friends were there, and they just, they liked it. But still, I went home at night and I said, I can't believe I said hell in church. I can't believe I said this in church. I can't believe I gave an invitation to Christ cussing. And it just gripped me with fear the whole night. And I, without having that daughter text me throughout the night and say, this person told me that touched them more than anything else. This person told me this, and different people would send me notes, not because I was asking for it, but just I needed that feedback because I was so. So anyway, just last week, I'm just again going, why did I say? Why did I do that? Why did I do it that way? But I have to remember, like Dan says, what's my goal? What's my audience? I'm trying to honor Christ, but I don't know why I'm gripped with fear every single time. I post on Facebook, and why did I say that? Bridget, you have any rejection advice? You've been on both ends, reading people's stuff in, submitting. How do you deal with it?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
How do you deal with rejection? How would you advise Miriam or someone?
I have some really hard rejection. I mean, I have been on the receiving end of some pretty harsh rejection. I mean, physically sitting across from in the desk from editors or publishers who have just given me whatnot. So therefore I have developed a very thick skin, and I've just learned to separate myself from the words. It's like, this is a product, this is something, it is not me that they are criticizing. And and that came with a lot of tears. But
you're still writing.
I'm still writing, and I mean, I there was a point where I was told, no, you don't need to write anymore. I mean, I've had some pretty harsh things said, and I just kept on. And I think the things that I learned was, one, to separate myself, but then also to really think very carefully about who I let, as Eric, I think, was saying, who I let read those first drafts. Anything in its infancy is, I choose very, very carefully who's going to get to look at that, because it has to be someone that respects the creative process, and anyone who isn't in our boat, if they don't respect the work it takes to bring an idea out of your head onto a piece of paper or to the screen, then they would, that they cannot give the kind of feedback that I needed. And so I said that was kind of the line I learned to draw as to who could read that. But anyway, so I guess my encouragement would be any kind of rejection or any kind of criticism someone gives, it's not you they're criticizing. It's those words. A friend of mine, a writer friend, they're just criticizing letters on a page. And so I try to keep that at distance. And at this point, as Deb said, I'm in an age bracket where I'm like, I've heard it all. you're not going to bother me. But
no, I think those are good words of advice, though. Just the guarding who you let into that, but also letting people into that so that they can give you the encouragement you need to. Kent, you do a lot of creativity stuff and encouraging with people in creative endeavors. How do you nurture those baby ideas, or how are there ways that you can do that so it doesn't squash your idea? How can you, maybe if you have any thoughts? But
Well, the way that I think about it is that ideas are just ideas. And I think if you can put some emotional distance between you and your ideas, then it's a lot easier. Like, so at least my tendency is to be very emotionally tied up in whatever I create, whether it's a book or a podcast or something I write or music that I play or create or whatever it is. It's easy to base your self-worth on whether people like it or not, or whether you feel accepted or affirmed by other people. But I think if you can somehow separate your value as a person from whether people like and accept your creative work, then that's a really healthy thing. I don't know any other way to survive emotionally as an artist. I mean, you just have to realize, there's a lot of reasons why people like or don't like something. Even, literally just in the past week, I went to see the movie 1917 with my brother. I thought it was good. I wasn't super thrilled about it, but my wife and son loved it. They absolutely went gaga over the movie. So people have different reactions to things. So sometimes there's no...
Even the best produced, the most expensive production. Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason sometimes, why people like or dislike something. So I don't know. I think especially in the Christian community, sometimes, we bring spirituality into the whole process. And in fact, I had a situation last year where I was helping this, it was a client, and she's a really dedicated Christian lady. I was helping her edit and self-publish her book. So I was working on the cover with her and everything, and she was set on this one specific title. And she literally said to me, I feel like God has given me this title. And it was a really horrible title, but I couldn't say that. But I was trying to help her to understand from a marketing standpoint. I'm like, this title, it doesn't mean anything to anybody else but you. We need to really work on this. So, for a lot of us, but a lot of us are that way sometimes about the stuff that we make. We get very spiritually and emotionally tied up into it so that there's no way we can be objective. So I don't know. I think just trying to be more objective about the stuff we create can be a really helpful thing. So, but the other part I would throw in there is that I like to test out ideas. Like, that's why I think doing a podcast or having a blog, putting stuff on social media can be so helpful, because you can test the waters a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you can see, oh, this resonates with people, or this doesn't resonate with people. And you can just get that immediate feedback, which I think is so helpful.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. Anything, feel free to check out, as a few people are doing. There's a little chat room. I don't know if you see it on the side, but you can see people's comments, and they're saying, you know, they have to run and tuck somebody in or something. So you're welcome to check out, but I'm glad to hear you. Jeff?
Bye, Eric. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thanks
Bye.
for coming. All right.
Yeah, I have to actually run too. It's been great being on here with you guys.
Great, Kent. Thanks for jumping in and sharing.
Absolutely, my
Me-
pleasure.
I think me too. I'm headed out, you guys. Great meeting you guys.
You too.
Me
Thanks
too.
for the invite, Eric.
Okay, you're welcome, Mitch. And if you know other people that want to come, feel free to invite them.
Will it be the same link next month?
Yep, same link each month. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you,
gonna
everybody.
Thank you so much.